Hi everyone and welcome to the Football Analyst. Today we'll be looking at Manchester City in the wake of Rodri's injury and the tactics that they may employ. The games we'll be focusing on are the previous two draws against Arsenal and Newcastle in the Premier League, with a predominant focus on the match against Arsenal and quickly looking at a familiar tactic they went with against Newcastle. Without further ado, let's get stuck in and have a look at City's tactics in possession. Against Arsenal with Rodri, when playing out from the back, Man City set up in what is essentially a 3-4-3, with whoever the holding midfielder is dropping in between the centre-backs, and their full-backs pushing extremely wide to open up the field for forward passes through the press. The 6 is usually Rodri, but once he was subbed off, Kovacic can be seen playing this role. Occasionally Bernardo Silva will free roam and support build-up if the numbers are not in Man City's favour, and almost interchange with Kovacic in the single pivot with a back three. Arsenal predominantly defend in a 4-4-2 with some movement during marking. We can see they've sort of adjusted to a 4-3-3 in this example. In the end, Partey won't track Silva's movements due to fear of a ball straight through into the 9. Before we move forward, I would like to kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel, please, if you'd like to see more analysis. My goal is to grow the channel to a point in which I can get some better software to make the analysis process not so time consuming and also make the video more engaging for you as the viewer. If that sounds great, please consider by subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Let's move on. We can see this sort of positioning with Rodri and Kovacic's combined heat maps for the match. Due to City's territorial dominance, there's a large concentration in the forward half. However, we can see some blue spread in deeper areas slightly to the left to accommodate for Bernardo Silva's movements into that sort of free roaming, double pivot, single pivot position. Here we can roughly see the shape of both teams with Rodri splitting the centre backs. Notice also Silva's positioning throughout. But let's break that down. In this first example in what is City's opening goal, we can clearly see the 3-4-3 shape, with Arsenal holding the 4-4-2 formation. Because Arsenal want to keep Partey free, Martinelli is slightly tucked due to Silva's movements, leaving space for Walker to receive and play down the line to Savinho. This has totally dragged Arsenal out of shape as Partey has had to track Silva's movements, but also protect against Savinho's great touch inside. This means Gabriel must decide whether to track Silva or cover Haaland. From this, City are able to drive with numbers for Haaland's opener, with Arsenal unable to close down. Haaland is played through and scores. With Bernardo Silva, we can see in the defensive half that he will drop in between the centre-backs to receive, and deep towards the right to link up with Diaz and Walker. Something to notice is his positioning is in the right wing area, this large concentration here, but we'll touch on that later when it comes to City in the forward half. Here, notice Silva's movements to drop deep and the space that's actually left behind him. So we've got a couple Arsenal players here really guarding nothing, just some space, while Silva's created sort of a 3v1 here, outnumber. So Silva's ability to drop deep has totally negated Rice's movements to pick up Kovacic. Now City are playing out with a back four, if you can imagine it, against the front three from Arsenal. As Partey was tracking Silva and reluctant to follow him and instead maintain his position, this has meant that there's big space for Gundogan to receive on the left side of midfield, with either Saka having to deal with a 2v1 against Guardiola and Gundogan, or Partey will need to push over to this quickly. However, Arsenal opt to stay aggressive and push Saliba up to cover Gundogan. However, Gundogan pushes deeper, taking Rice's attention and forcing Trossard to press Silva. This leaves an easy pass to Diaz, who can progress the ball into the middle third comfortably, and City now have control of the pitch. Here is another example of Man City finding Diaz in space to push forward. This time they play into Gundogan, the free man, forcing Saliba to again aggressively push forward, with Silva occupying Partey. This again leaves space for Diaz to receive even an unideal ball and progress comfortably out of the back third against a relatively aggressive press. Against Newcastle, City reverted back to a familiar 3-2-2-3 formation with the box of 4 in midfield, with 2 holding midfielders and 2 more advanced. This keeps Newcastle's press tight into the centre of the pitch, allowing Gvardiol and Walker space to receive, as Newcastle's shape often mixed between a 4-2-4 that's become common and a 4-3-2-1 due to City's manipulation of their shape. The interesting thing to note is Akanji has been deployed in the Stones role of the past and operates as one of the double pivots, with Gvardiol and Walker joining the back 3 with Diaz in the middle. Here we can clearly see Akanji's positioning as part of the double pivot, whilst there is a large concentration in the front half of where a common number 6 might be when a team has dominant territorial possession. We can see his heat map is all over the field, particularly through the centre of the pitch as well. They're able to get Gundogan out. It is particularly at this moment that City successfully break down Newcastle. Here Tonali is caught between marking Akanji or Gundogan, as all his other teammates have been successfully drawn in by City passes and can't recover quickly enough to block passes to either of them. In the end, it's an easy pass into Akanji and out to Gundogan in space. Occasionally, due to the double pivots dragging their markers so close to the ball, Ederson or one of the back 3 can play direct into the front line, usually Haaland, who can then lay off into space. When in the front third, City like to predominantly play down the right and drag their midfield across to try and overwhelm an identified weakness, which is usually the fullback they've scouted to be less capable. We can see even Gundogan has moved across. Doing so also keeps the opposing flank open, as defensive numbers need to push across to even up numbers defensively, opening up chances at the back post. They also use Gvardiol as a pseudo left forward and keep Doku out wide, which can also be Grealish, whereas most teams would have it the other way around, with their forward being inverted and fullback overlapping. We can see Gundogan doesn't drop as deep as Silva, as there is no need and that would just cramp the progression with too many players in the area. However, the interesting thing to note is his large concentration on the right flank. Guardiola tends to try to dominate one flank with numbers, which is also how he beat Real Madrid en route to City's UCL triumph. That video can also be found on the channel. We can see how far right Gundogan is, and even Gvardiol has come further across than where he would usually be. The pure congestion of numbers leads to an Arsenal mistake. Let's analyse this further. Notice the sheer concentration of City players on this right-hand half space. Doing this essentially warrants Arsenal's defensive shape redundant, as Guardiola is essentially saying, when we have the ball, we are going to force you to only play in this part of the field. We can see Silva is left unaccounted, as Arsenal have to cover the numbers in the half space. So we can see Silva down here. If we count the Arsenal defenders, we can see City actually outnumber them 8-7 in this part of the field. By doing this, we can see that City have actually dragged 6 Arsenal defenders into this pocket while maintaining numbers outside of it. Any ball over to Doku allows him space to attack, as with Silva. We can see both Arsenal centre-backs have been dragged forward by Savinho and Haaland, leaving gaps to attack directly through. What's stopping Gvardiol here driving through this space? It's very clever from Guardiola, pulling Arsenal into a concentrated space and then attacking outside of it. So essentially, City will either kill you in tight with numbers if you over-defend in that area, they will beat you out in the spread outside of that congestion. Let's now take a look at how City press their opponents. City play a pretty simple 4-1-4-1 pressing style, in this case against a 4-2-4 setup from Arsenal. If the ball is played to a centre-back, Haaland bends his run and presses to ensure the ball doesn't get switched out to the other side, and it's instead funneled into the fullback, where City can begin to squeeze their opponent. As the play unfolds, Gundogan and Silva push up onto the double pivots, shutting play into them down, with Rodri holding to help with any genuine 1v1s against the back line that may occur. We can see Haaland's bent run and the pivots being marked by Gundogan and Silva. Saliba didn't want to play into the congestion, and even though they got the switch to Gabriel, City were able to shift and squeeze them into the corner and produce an error. Here, City are in a really good position. Haaland has successfully pushed Saliba to make a rush decision and picks conservatively to play back to the keeper. City would rather trap the opposition on the flank where they have players marked, but don't mind whether they try and switch the ball, as the ball is pinned right back on Arsenal's goal line. An interesting thing to notice is Trossard has come up with Savinho shifting to monitor him, but the ball can't get to Trossard in that position unless they switch. He needed to be closer to the ball earlier, or Raya needed to identify which side Trossard was attempting to create an outnumber. Arsenal have successfully shifted the ball, but also failed to open up any sort of avenue out of their back third and are now pinned in the other corner. Although Arsenal have a 4-3 player advantage in the immediate area, the only free pass is back to Gabriel, which is then taken by Calafiori. City are also not giving Arsenal the time to send a long ball to a forward with any real threat, other than to just dump it long. Even Diaz has come up to mark Trossard to ensure the ball needs to be cleared. In the end, Savinho presses quickly on Gabriel, not allowing time to load up a long ball, as well as blocking a pass back to Calafiori. Gabriel tries a risky pass to Trossard, but misfires and it ends up going out over the touchline. In conclusion, with Rodri now gone for an extended period of time, City will have to rely on a less defensive option as a central pivot. Silva already operates as a free-roaming number 8 that drops between the centre-backs, which may become even more prevalent. Kovacic is the likely replacement long-term, but doesn't have the defensive capability that has made Rodri so pivotal to both Spain and City. Fortunately, Pep has the options in the squad to tuck in Guardiola and position Akanji or John Stones in a double pivot when playing out with Kovacic. Regardless, it's safe to say City will be the weaker without Rodri, but will still remain the primordial threat in every competition in which they participate. Just want to say to everyone, thank you very much for watching. If you did like the video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. As always, may your team be forever winning.